of 24.3% of the entire world. And it's even less in the Muslim world. I first researched this number, which is like less than 25% of the entire world. It's very little. I first researched it when I was reading a book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Mankind. And the author was dismantling the leadership of stereotypes based on gender in patriarchal societies. And he says this: if there is any truth in these stereotypes, the stereotypes being that women are more manipulative, therefore more cooperative, then women should have made excellent politicians and empire builders. And this rarely happens in the real world. And my first thought was, well, what a shame, right? Because we could be doing so much good in the world if only more of us took leadership positions. The numbers are merely results based on a continued struggle towards centuries. This generation is asked to make huge sacrifices in order to lead to a more just society where everyone has the same rights and opportunities, where women's leadership is no longer the exception but the norm, and therefore we wouldn't even need more exclusive girl training programs just so we can come close to a certain percentage of women leaders. This is a very deep and long struggle, but it is especially fragile now in the COVID-19 era and all its implications. It is clear from what we see in the news every day that health emergencies don't impact men and women in the same way. And acknowledging this will not only help us overcome the impacts of this pandemic, but also avoid future ones, God forbid. I'm representing a third world country, and we still have to worry about women's safety, even in broad daylight. We still have to deal with young girls given way to early marriages, being denied their education and basic rights. I'm among you today and immensely aware of my privilege. I'm heart-shattered to know that girls my age and far younger don't get the same opportunity. I'm also grateful for the lifelong fight our women ancestors have been putting up for generations that have enabled me to speak up today. It is why, while we're still working towards a more equal society, those of us who are privileged enough to own their rights have the utmost responsibility to fight for those who still can't find their voices and have them heard. Empowering women isn't only good for the woman herself, but for the whole society, because an empowered and safe woman will lead to a resilient and safer society. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has unfortunately undone many of the greatest achievements we have made throughout the years. For starters, this past year, as school closed and moved online, we have witnessed a jarring amount of girl dropout due to extended closure and poverty. We have also witnessed an increased occurrence in early marriages, and as families lost their jobs and were unable to feed their children properly. All these are direct effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and on the livelihood of girls and women. But there are those who are indirect too, those that the pandemic only helped intensify, like domestic abuse, for example. I'm pretty sure the panelists next to me will detail this one later on. So, but last year, after a prolonged lockdown and quarantine, two things happened. So one, the divorce rate shot up, and with little to no income, the divorcee is left with no support. And two, the number of women abused by their husbands has skyrocketed. And what were mere abuses and injuries turned to deaths in worst cases. So ironically, the pandemic wasn't only taking lives directly, but also indirectly. And it goes beyond saying that a lot of women have permanently lost their jobs and their only source of income. What can we do in this COVID-19 pandemic era? Well, this panel is a living proof that we're not just going to sit cross-handed and hope for the best, because doers are achievers and anything else is just wishful thinking. Raising awareness to this issue is very important. And one thing that I think we should start with is unlearning the patriarchy. We can do this with events like this one by encouraging girls to speak up and find their voices, to participate in the current issues debate. And hopefully this panel will serve as a reminder of what can be achieved and as an encouragement to take action. And what are the policy recommendations that we can give in this recovery era in order to be more inclusive to women and promote gender equality? We can first start by providing support for parents with children who are combining working from home and childcare. in order to avoid girl dropouts and girls' early marriages due to poverty. And we can even push forward to provide crisis counseling support services to women dealing with this heavy task. A national database should be set up immediately to register reported cases of violence against women under the quarantine. And we should include women, especially women representatives, because they're the experts in parliament, should be involved in decision-making processes to form public policies and ensure that these policies are gender just. We should improve working conditions for women, taking into consideration their needs and ensuring their safety. We should involve women front runners, especially in doctors and experts, lead into the recovery after COVID-19, and taking into consideration the recommendation and advice in terms of the response to future emergencies. More than this, we can go on and promote women's right and girls' right to access to information and knowledge and technology and digital rights, because right now everything has moved online, and if we don't fight for girls' digital rights, then we're still lacking behind. We can also move forward and conduct a gender-segregated research on leadership styles to help visualize women and girls in our societies and explore the detailed approaches and on how it can be implemented with different styles, with different workplaces. Of course, these workplaces need to be, we need to make sure that they are inclusive and give the women the chance to apply for leadership positions that they qualify for. I think if we do all of this, we'll have a more gender just society. And what I can finish off by saying is that I hope more girls will find this panel encouraging to take more action and take matters into their own hands and apply to leadership positions, apply to training programs, because from what I've learned from my MOIC experience is that it's always a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge, but you're not alone. There's always a huge team backing you up and pushing you forward so that you'll be able to make it and succeed. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shema, for this very beautiful presentation and also wonderful recommendations. And you really addressed the issue wonderfully, and I really can't thank you enough. Our next on our roster of valuable speakers is Miss Amina Carriman, also a MOIC country coordinator for Bosnia. Amina is a second-year undergraduate student at an international university of Sarajevo, Department of International Relations. At only 21 years old, she works as a radio host at the media center of her Islamic community in Bosnia and has been active in debating since high school. She's also a volunteer with the NGO Our Children, and it's something to do with the rights of children. Amina will speak about the implications of lockdowns on women and girls and the rise of violence against women and children during the pandemic, how to approach and eliminate violence with a special focus on policy. And I'm sure Amina also has many other experiences that she can share, as Shema did, on her own experience facing the challenges of pandemics. Dear Amina, it's a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored and pleased to speak on this important topic in front of all of you. And also I'm glad to look at all these faces who see this as a valuable opportunity to spend their time on it. For a year now, we have all been facing the great challenges, problems brought by the pandemic. And what is certain is that everyone feels the consequences, whether they are in some cases easier and in the other cases harder. It is exactly on this date, on 8th March, when we, instead of talking about the importance and role of women in the family, in the society, we have unfortunately fallen to the level that we need to talk and raise awareness of how often is violence against women and girls in general, especially today, when we face unprecedented challenges. So I will go back to the very beginning of the story, to that view which implies that pandemic and isolation actually provides an opportunity to spend more time with our families. And it's really nice to live a life that allows us to see lockdown right from this perspective. But still, we need to ask ourselves what is on the other side? What is with those who have had problems in their homes, in their families, and especially in their relationship with their spouses? So as soon as we become aware that actually this is somebody's reality, unfortunately, we realize that the struggle of women never stops. And that this 8th of March, International Women's Day, besides all congratulations and kind words, is just another day during which the struggle for women's rights continues. COVID-19, like all other of its previous predecessors, is transforming the world in its own ways and is affecting different people differently. So coronavirus has also revealed the ugly face of crime committed within the so-called sacred domain of home. Violent men could not be stopped, tough the governments over the world are developing what seems to stop the spread of coronavirus. So in the isolation during the lockdown, when the commuters know that women have no other support available and cannot escape so easily, they abuse women. So basically, lockdown may be controlling the spread of virus, but it could not prevent men dominating and controlling women. Lockdown could not contain violent, ugly behavior of men. Lockdown could not prevent men from displaying their sense of entitlements and privileges or from asserting their prerogative to abuse women in home. Unfortunately, even many research done by official institutions as well as universities from all over the world are showing that violence against women tends to increase during every type of emergency, including this type of COVID-19. I will just mention a few examples, which are obviously showing some primary ways of how women are affected in these situations. So as first, we have stress, the disruption of social and protective networks, and decreased access to services. All of that can increase the risk of violence for women. Second one, as distancing measures are put in place and people are encouraged to stay at home, the risk of intimate partner violence is likely to increase. So for example, the likelihood that women is in an abusive relationship and their children will be exposed to violence is dramatically increased as family members spend more time in close contact and families cope with additional stress and potential economic or job losses. So women may have less contact with family and friends who usually provide support and protection for them from violence. Third one is that actually women bear the brunt of increased care work during this pandemic. One obvious example is that school closures further exacerbate this burden and place even more stress on them. The next one is that the disruption of livelihoods and ability to earn a living, including for women, many of whom are informal wage workers, will decrease access to basic needs and basic services, increasing stress on families with the potential to exacerbate conflicts and violence. So as resources become more scarce, women may be at greater risk for experiencing economic abuse. Also, two reasons I want to mention is that perpetrators of abuse may use restrictions due to COVID-19 to exercise their power and control over their partners to further reduce access to services, help, and psychosocial support from both formal and informal networks. And the last reason, which I would like to mention, is that the other services such as crisis centers, shelters, legal aid, and protection services may also be scaled back, further reducing access to few sources of help that women have in abusive relationships. So this is just one part of the overall problems that arise in the current situation. So it's necessary to find a solution for all of them. And in the following part of my speech, I will try to recommend just few of these solutions which can be applicable in many of our societies. So first solution is building networks of leaders within the community. Basically, leadership development is a core premise of any good community engagement effort. Finding and fostering new leaders creates messengers who can help raise awareness about family violence and articulate the connections between child abuse and domestic violence. Leaders also mobilize people to action, engage them in new activities to identify as well as to prevent violence. Development of new leaders from within each community also helps ensure that reform efforts will will be sustained. This approach equips community leaders and gatekeepers with information and skills they need to engage their community in family violence prevention. So it engages also community members in assessing their own realities and in critical thinking and planning that can lead to action. It provides opportunities to learn new skills and apply them to personal and community life. The only challenge considering this is challenge to develop a group of leaders and not to rely too much on only one individual. A second solution, which can be also applicable in many of our states and societies, is connecting community residents to services. Awareness is the first step towards preventing and reducing family violence. The next is to get help to the families who need it. Help can come from traditional and existing services, as well as from new programs developed by residents themselves. So the approach provides real services to community members in need. It creates access points within the community that enhance members' ability to find help and to connect to social networks. Third one, which is a bit connected to this second that I've been talking about, is making services and institutions accountable to community needs. So change in the community engagement sites often comes from and is led by community residents. Actually, those are those who know firsthand the problems and the potential solutions. But permanent change also needs to involve the state agencies and institutions formally charged with supporting families and protecting children and the community. So collaborating with grassroots organizations and placing workers in the neighborhood does not come easily to traditional social service systems. But there is a growing recognition among state and local officials that families will be safer when communities are involved. There was also a growing recognition on the part of some communities that the system is actually not the enemy. System can help families, girls, and the whole society. So this approach creates a powerful voice for social change and the voice of those who are directly affected by abuse. It promotes empowerment and leadership development. It engages institutions in constructive dialogue with community members about how cases are and should be handled. And last but not the least, is raising awareness of family violence and changing norms. I'm sure that this is something that all of us have been talking about a lot of times. And this is something that can be done by the individual, by the group, within our MOIC clubs, as well as done by the state. So one of the first requirements in our community mobilization effort is to raise awareness of the problem. If people do not know that family violence exists in their community, if they don't understand its impact or know where to turn for help, they will be unlikely to get involved or to communicate the unacceptability of violence. Violence is often seen as a private matter, one that families are hesitant to talk about. But the organizations discovered that families who have a safe place and opportunity to speak about violence have no reluctance to do so. Raising awareness allows people to think differently about the problem, to see different perspective, and to own the issue as one that they can do something about. It helps community members to better understand how and why family violence happens and how it affects the community. Also, it creates a vehicle for establishing new norms about the family violence and how it can be actually prevented. It brings the dialogue as well about violence in the home into public consciousness, and it addresses the denial and isolation that often surround family violence. So those would be just some out of many recommendations which can really make a change in our societies. And just to conclude, I want to say that lockdown has highlighted the importance of home, and keeping in mind its necessity in future, it is essential that democratic norms to be observed, and homes should emerge as safe zones where violence should be eliminated in all forms. Restoring rights and dignity of all is important. Economic, social, and political empowerment of women is important also in long run. Lockdown could imply strengthening existing stereotypical notions of locking our collective imaginations to the idea of women as second-class citizens, or it could also imply locking the patriarchal notions and ideas to imagine a violence-free, gender equal world. And at the end, after talking about this pretty hard topic, I just want to wish all the best for Our Lady, which is present here, and I wish world without violence to all of us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Amina. Indeed, was wonderful presentation, and I'm very happy actually that Shema, Amina, you did lots of reflections on your own, and that's what this platform is for, because we wanted to hear from youth on how they faced the challenges of the COVID by themselves, and how, from their own perspectives, they give us their understanding on how they have been feeling about it, how they look at the crisis, and now how they are proposing solutions. And this is just start to get together and talk about our issues. Starting from the Women Day is just, we're trying to make the sparkle here, but we're looking forward to you leading this type of discourse and conversations and platforms and discussions in your own communities and also at the global level. You are actually, all of you are entitled to do that. And I am very happy to be among you today just to facilitate and listen. It's my joy to be listening to my wonderful speakers. And our third speaker today is Fahmida Faiza, MOIC country coordinator for Bangladesh, our beloved Bangladesh, the OIC Youth Capital this year. Faiza has pioneered Model OIC in Bangladesh as the founding country coordinator since 2017. And she has been working to establish MOIC and engage young people with this platform. Along with her team, she has successfully organized the first ever youth CFM and the national Model OIC in Bangladesh. Aside from MOIC, Fahmida also had experience in other model simulations such as MUN, Model ASEM, and Model Parliament. Fahmida also has been active with ICYF since 2015, and she is a law graduate with higher studies from the UK. She currently serves in the public policy sector, and she's working as the head of safeguarding at South Asian Football Federation. So she's also at the sports field where I don't see many ladies. Congratulations. Fahmida will address holistic approaches to the well-being of women and girls in the post-COVID-19 era, with a special focus again on the policy, and we are looking also at the well-being of women and young girls. Fahmida, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. A very warm wish on the occasion of International Women's Day. I would first like to thank ICYF for organizing this forum and Dr. Fadila for kindly having her time for moderating this session.
It's my pleasure.
To listen and engage with a global panel of young women leaders from OIC member states from all regions across the world. So as it has been already introduced that I'm a British law graduate, and currently I'm working with the South Asian Football Federation and heading the safeguarding policies for 7 countries in South Asia. And largely the part of work that I do has a lot to deal with protecting women and children from all sorts of exploitation and abuse. So today it engages more meaning for me to talk at this International Women's Day, as we do see violence against women in all the sectors, irrespective of gender, irrespective of regions, and irrespective of the fields that they're working at. My volunteering experience with ICYF started in 2015, and I represented as a national female youth delegate at the first OIC Young Leaders Summit in 2016. And later I participated at Putrajaya OIC Youth Capital and other ICYF events. With MOIC, as it has already been said, that I pioneered the platform in Bangladesh and started the journey in 2017, which actually led us that inspiration to start the first national model OIC as the official youth event of the OIC Tourism Ministers meeting. And it is noteworthy that for the first time in the history of CFM, a youth event was organized, and through Dhaka Declaration, the youth voices were formally recognized with the initiative of ICYF and through my team over here in Bangladesh back in 2018. So as I talk about the model OIC platform, and it gives me the pleasure to meet all the MOIC leaders from all across OIC member states, I would like to mention that I also achieved Best Delegate Award at the first Executive Model OIC at Baku. And as a young woman leader, I would like to thank Ministry of Youth and Sports of Bangladesh for handing over the key of Dhaka OIC Youth Capital 2020 in my hand. Now, as we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is regardless of the region that we all come from and the realities that we all face, I believe this is one space that we all agree that women are the most vulnerable gender and the most vulnerable group when we talk about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. And during the last 1 year, as we have seen that the pandemic has raised many issues, and before the pandemic, there were globally, there were 243 million women and girls aged 15 to 49 experiencing sexual and or physical violence. And since COVID, as we all know, that it has intensified in many folds. Now, my previous panelists have already covered that what causes what are the reasons and what causes the violence against women post and after before pandemic. What I would like to address is that what holistic approach can we consider to ensure the well-being of women and girls are protected in the post-COVID-19 era. So as we talk about the well-being, the first thing first comes is the access to healthcare. And it's not just the access to healthcare. When we talk about women, we also have to take care of the sexual and reproductive rights and health issues and the maternity health issues. We also have to equally acknowledge with enough emphasize that mental health is often disregarded and often not that much into focus when we talk about the access to health and the improvement of health for women and all sorts of spaces. So as we know that if I come from South Asia, and as we've all faced different sorts of realities from all across the world, from South Asia or from Bangladesh, I can say that mental health is still considered as one of the tabooed areas to talk about. It's very stigmatized, it's very stereotyped, and people, especially women, are not very vocal about talking about their mental health issues. So many women during the lockdown has faced enormous amount of violence that has led them to depression, anxiety, and panic disorder, and lots of other mental health related issues that needs to be recognized and addressed by the governments. And by recognizing the importance of mental health and well-being for women and girls all across the world, and creating a global or regional support group, we can actually provide that facilitation for women growing stronger, growing united, and creating a sisterhood among all the OIC member states. So my recommendation would be to create a network that can facilitate the wider connectivity of OIC women from all regions, from all countries, who can support each other, share their experiences of overcoming challenges, so that it's women pulling another woman, and it's not women pushing another woman down. Because it is important to recognize the Muslim sisterhood as much as we talk about Muslim brotherhood. This could ideally be the platform for sharing the best practices and motivation for uplifting women. So at this International Women's Day, my first recommendation would be women extending hands to each other and creating a OIC Young Women's Forum, so that we can have an integrated network to share our journey and support each other. Second recommendation from myself would be to ensure more accessible healthcare for women. Especially in Asia, we see that women in rural areas are very vulnerable and they don't have the access to healthcare. In that regard, we can provide telemedicine support at a local and national level to facilitate women in remote areas, especially in villages. And lastly, as the policy recommendation, I would like to suggest that we need to provide right information for women, because women who are working as homemaker or sitting in the remotest parts of the world where they don't have the access to information, they are often misguided and they're often misregarded and misvalued by their family members. So by providing right information for women and creating a knowledge space for women on different issues, we can reduce and minimize the common challenges that are faced by women all across the world. We can create resources and can amplify knowledge, which are essential in raising mass awareness on issues such as sexual and reproductive health and rights, domestic violence, physiological abuse, and property inheritance, and many more other sectors. So as I would like to conclude today, I want to say that let's not take 8th March and only International Women's Day, the only day to talk about women and the issues that we face every day. Because being on the other side, being the opposite sex, being a woman every day is a challenge that we overcome each day. This International Women's Day, the theme is choose to challenge, and I choose to challenge all sorts of gender stereotypes, social narratives, and social stigma that bring us down as women, and establish a Muslim sisterhood to hold each other and support each other and pull each other up. Not on this day, but on every day for 365 days a year. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Fahmida. Indeed, such a wonderful also addition to the presentations that really left me thinking deep and brought me back to the 2018 in Dhaka, when we had a very, very special actually experience with the Bangladeshi people, and especially the Bangladeshi women, which actually I admire for their strength and for they have been doing so much, and their contribution to the development of the country and to the Muslim world is actually remarkable. And inshallah, you will be one of those in the future, in the line of those great women that I know in person. This is good. We have been also talking about the well-being of women, and that's the mental health of women, which were issues I don't see them much in the table, especially at the OIC region. And you at the MOIC country representatives and coordinators level, being aware of how serious this issue is, will bring us actually to more serious discussions on this issue, because more girls and more women and more actually young females are challenging, I mean, outside challenges, but they are challenged by themselves too, because as the first speaker, Shaima, said something, we are mostly sometimes the enemies of ourselves, because many of those women are not able even to express what they are going through, and it takes the others to speak up about them. And for that, we need to make the balance, and we need to make sure each and every girl is heard. And that's probably, you're not very lucky generation that you don't have a choice but to be those agents to make the girls' voice heard. And that's why we will be giving you many more platforms at the ICYF level to give you the chance to bring these issues up and bring proposals on how to tackle these issues, and make the policymakers hear you at the OIC level and also at the global level. Moving to the last but not least for today, the delightful Ms. Aisha Hana, our MOIC country and region coordinator from the USA and North America. Aisha Hana has a background in international relations, global affairs, transnational security, cybersecurity, and cybercrime, with degrees from New York University and NYU and University du Québec à Montréal. Her previous roles were with the United Nations think tanks, NGOs, and private sector organizations. Aisha has also lived in various countries with diverse backgrounds and speaks Arabic, French, English, and Spanish. And I think there is something else she didn't say. She currently works for the tech Adaptica, a Toronto-based ed tech company, offering avatar-based virtual conference platforms to a variety of organizations worldwide. Aisha will enlighten us today on new approaches to addressing and tackling women and girls issues in the post-COVID era from her own perspective, from the angle of North America. Dear Aisha Hana, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadila. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you all. I first also wanted to thank the Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum for the thoughtful invitation. And let me say that I really appreciate the efforts ICYF is doing towards enhancing women's roles in the development of their societies, while also putting forward the importance of equal rights, as I believe this is very important and all of us on this call do so as well. Also, it's definitely important to talk about the marginalization of women and the failure also to integrate us in the decision-making processes. And I'm glad that we're taking the time today to talk about it. Before getting into the theme that I wanted to mention today, I wanted to point out something that I believe is crucial to keep in mind, which is because my theme is the new approaches to addressing and tackling women and girls issues, but I believe it's really important to differentiate something. The needs of women are different than the needs of girls, and the same applies to the challenges women face and compared to the challenges girls face. And it's also the same for the challenges and needs of a woman living in a certain conflict area or in a specific war zone or on another geopolitically stable region or zone. They're different compared to another one for another woman living in another region. So it is all different, and definitely organizations need to adapt to each situation case by case and work on that. And before going into the new approaches to addressing and tackling women and girls issues in the post-COVID era, I want to talk about a couple of issues women are currently facing, were facing pre-COVID, and sadly will continue to face post-global pandemic. Even though the challenges we're facing as women are sadly present in so many different fields, for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on women in leadership and political participation. And also for those that don't know, this year the United Nations theme is for International Women's Day is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future. So I thought, let me focus on that. In terms of information, I was looking for data and refreshing my mind on data. So data shows that women are underrepresented at all levels of decision-making worldwide, and achieving gender parity in political life is far off. We're sadly, it's the sad truth, we're far from it. And just to give you some facts and figures that, and I can definitely after this call share the links for those of you who would like to deepen their research. So it's from the last UN Women's statement on this topic. So women, in terms of data, women serve as heads of state or governments in only 22 countries. And 119 countries have never had a woman leader. And just to put that into perspective, that's out of current 193 UN member states. So out of that, there's only 22 that women are leading. Also, according to the UN Women's 2020 Women in Politics map, and here again, I can definitely share that map, only 21% of government ministers were women, with only 14 countries having achieved 50% or more women in their cabinet. Also, the 5 most commonly held portfolios by women ministers are generally family, children, youth, elderly, disabled. After that, it's social affairs. We also have environment, natural resources, and everything that is related to energy. There's also employment. There is also, of course, women affairs and gender equality, which all of these are great and important positions. Don't get me wrong, they are very crucial. But it would also be great to see more women as ministers of foreign affairs, ministers of defense, prime ministers, commerce ministers, generally positions that are male dominated. And the same also applies for women in peace building. We need more women in peace negotiations as mediators, negotiators, and that are present and signatories for peace agreements. And by the way, I have mentioned women in executive government positions, but I'm inviting you also all to read more and look for more information about women in national parliaments and women in local governments. GAP are also still present in these categories as well. So now you might be wondering, what could be the approaches and ways we can address and tackle women and girls issues, right? So the first one I'd like to put forward is claim your space. Really claim your seat at the table. Make sure you're active and participating where decisions are being made. Depending on your academic and professional background, depending on your field of expertise, make sure you're heard. And of course, always do that respectfully. And this applies to all sectors: politics, science, sports, community organizations, corporate world. Make sure the current leaders understand your wants and needs. And when I say you, I mean women and girls, people around you, depending on the groups and communities you're in. Also, I know that it's truly important. Everyone is talking about diversity, but gender-based diversity is one of them. And we need to ensure that as well. And I also wanted to say, okay, I wanted to pitch you all some actions that we could be doing, that women could be doing to do so. So within your organizations, demand equal pay for work of equal value. In so many cases, women and men are holding the same positions, but they're not having the same pay. So ask that it becomes equal. Use platforms to speak up for equality and as a tool to empower women and girls around you. Use them to denounce inequalities, while of course, so use your platforms, but always make sure you're sharing reliable information. I always like to say fact check before spreading information. I don't want anyone after this call be like, oh, I'm sharing information and it's all fake news. So also something else that you could be doing is raise awareness among children and youth around you, parents, family members, educators, all of that to reject the different gender biases regarding women's careers, for example, because it's a life cycle. So we should teach the next generation, both girls and boys, about gender equality. And that applies not only for us as individuals, but it also applies to government institutions and, for example, ministries of education of the member states of the OIC could also and should include this in their educational programs in each grade, adapted to all ages. Also, something else is, let's lift one another up. I know we hear that often, but I'm going to be part of those that say it again. If one of us is in a leadership position and can lift up another, let's do it. Let's encourage one another. And the same applies for mentorship. If one of us, because it's great to ask for governments and organizations and the corporate world to do things, but also us, what can be like the grassroots elements that we could be working on. The same applies to in your local, national, regional policy world. If there is any woman that you believe in, support and elect her as a leader. Or if there is none and you could see yourself running for election, well, run for these elections, do it. Also, either be part of capacity building training for women or offer that if you have some skills that you could be sharing. So do community outreach. If you have skills that you might think might be useful to others, give a bit of your time and energy and share those skills away. That definitely can help. Also, and I mentioned it before, but I'm going to re-say it, use your platforms to amplify women's experiences, especially those that find themselves in a marginalized situation or minority communities. And for those watching who maybe have a background in journalism or are in media, call out stereotypes and underrepresentation of women when you see it. That's truly important to do. Now, those were actions that can be both taken by us as individuals, but also organizations. And now if it was to have 2 policy recommendations for governments, to keep it concise and in case for the time. So OIC member states and their governments should definitely develop policies that have for a goal to end all forms of discrimination against women and girls. So that includes, when we say discrimination, that is very, very broad, right? So that includes economical violence, physical violence, emotional, psychological. Governments could work together and share with one another what they worked on and what was best. So exchange, for example, of knowledge and good practices, but actually taking it to action. So let's, as much as possible, work on these things and get real actions out of it. Also, one can't talk about women issues women face without mentioning gender-based violence, also known as GBV. And for that also, I believe that government institutions should have a well-defined frameworks to reprimand and punish, judicially speaking, this type of violence and their perpetrators, because it's something that a lot of countries are lacking in doing. Of course, I could go on and on, but I'm just going to end by saying that solidarity. Sisters, everyone on here, solidarity. We need to work together and combine our strengths, because each one here has different strengths, and all together we complete like ourselves and build something stronger, especially if we want sustainable, positive outcomes. Also, one of the thoughts I'd like to leave you with is to think about what could be the obstacles you would need to have removed to achieve your goals. What are the obstacles you're facing? And if thankfully, alhamdulillah, you don't have any obstacles you're facing yourself directly, what about women in your community? What about girls in your community? What could you be doing to support them? And how could you be an ally? And that applies not only for women, but for men, like everyone. How could also men be allies? On that note, thank you all for listening to me speaking nonstop, and thank you all for the opportunity as well.
Thank you very much, Aisha Hana. It was indeed a pleasure listening to you. It was a pleasure to have all of you. It was a pleasure being today here, the student, to listen to my beautiful, wonderful girls addressing issues. My dreams to see all of you at the top leadership, making the bigger decisions about women in the OIC region and beyond. And we are here to support you. We are here behind you. We are here to mentor you. And we are here to listen to you because I do believe that our young people, especially this generation, you are smart and you are effective and you have the solutions. We just have to believe in you, and we do. The thing here is I enjoyed so much listening to you. None of you finished here 10 minutes, just to tell you the good news. You're so good. And I was not planning to stop any one of you to at the 10 minutes if she wants to say more. But I really thank you so much for respecting the time and for saying so much. Because see, we can say so much in a little time if we have what to say. And I recall a very beautiful story I read about in the middle. I mean, it's like probably in the 12th century. I just can't recall the name of one of the scholars who sent a long letter to his friend. And he said an apology at the beginning of the letter. He said, "My dear friend, I'm sending you a long, long letter. I'm sorry for that because I didn't have the time to write a very short letter." So it's not about talking long or writing long messages. It's about making the point. And you did, all of you made points, not one point. And your message is heard wonderfully and clearly and effectively. Now, let me ask my colleagues from the board of ICYF, if you have any questions, let me take them. If not, I have a plan. Do you have questions here for me, for the speakers, I mean? I see the chat, I don't see, okay, perfect. Looks like we have some, okay, here. Okay. Please write something in the message if you don't have ready questions. I am planning. I have a plan, and the plan is I'm going to give all the speakers 1 more minute to say something about the presentations of the others, because I'm sure you had some thinking and reflections why others were making their presentations. And I do believe this is actually the cream of the butter, where we listen to others and think, and we give some insights. So let's do that until if I have more questions, I'm going to address you, then I will be concluding. Let's start with the first speaker, Shaima. Please take your, I think Anas is already sending me many questions, but still I will give you the minutes. Shaima starts, inshallah, give us your insights about the whole presentation.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say that this has exceeded my expectations. In every speaker, I had like high expectations from every one of them because they are experienced. They are really leaders, as the sense of the term, all the meanings of the term. And I really agree on all the points that they started with, especially with Fahmida Faiza, when she said that we need to be uplifting each other. So, and the fact that I like the way how she ended her speech, that it's not just about this 8th of March, it's the 365 days, the other days, what do we do in those other days? So if this is just a wake-up call to us, or an action call to every one of us, then we should take it and we should implement it in the rest of the days. So I really appreciate that, and I really enjoyed listening to all of the other speakers, especially Amina with all her insights on on the violence and how we can avoid this kind of violence in societies, because lockdown last year have shown us how cruel human beings can get when they are together in one room, especially to the weaker gender, which is like Fahmida had said, we can't deny that it's women. And also our last speaker, which graced us with all her experience and her fact checker. I really appreciate that, because we should really spread good news and neutral news, and not biased news, because in this age of information and digital and technology, we can be misinformed easily, and there's a lot of information available and we have access to it. It's just whether or not it's true or not. So it's always good to fact check your information. So thank you very much, Aisha. Yeah, this is everything I have to say. Thank you very much, Dr. Fadila, for facilitating this meeting, and I had a very great time listening to all of you.
Thank you very much, Shaima. It's a pleasure listening to you as well. And now the floor is yours. Amina, please tell us from your corner, what do you think?
Well, I will try to make this 1 minute as short as possible, because all of this, what I've heard in this last almost an hour, is really something which is worth of our time. We were talking about some basic things, but about some things that we take for granted, but definitely we need to remind sometimes. As well ourselves, also the whole society. I'm really amazed of how much we are willing to make changes, and of how much we have ideas to do so. So I will take this as an opportunity to say thanks as first to Shaima, who made us think more about all this topic, to say thanks to Fahmida, who said some really motivational sentences, and for mentioning media, which has a very, very big impact. And also to thanks Aisha for all those concrete advices, which are based on experience. Also, I wanted to thank you, Mr. Fadila, for helping us moderate this session. I hope that all of this, what we have been talking about in the last hour, will have some impact on our society and the way of thinking of at least one woman.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Amina. Fahmida, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much once again for giving me the floor. It gives me much pleasure. Like, I, for the first time, would like to recognize that we have not only female attendees, we have male attendees who are actually listening to women who are sharing the problems and challenges. And I think from, like, I can individually admire all of these amazing panelists that we have. Indeed, like, I can go on and on, but just to identify two common grounds that we all shared is that, one, united we are stronger. We really need to emphasize on Muslim sisterhood, and this is about time we start making our network stronger and more diverse and more attached within ourselves. And the second thing that we all agreed on, that violence against women is worldwide. It's not a regional issue. It's not a local or national issue. It is an issue which is faced by women irrespective of OIC or non-OIC countries. And there should be judicial punishment. There should be stronger law enforcement at the government level. And also from globally, there has to be much more stronger awareness about this violence against women related issues. Definitely, I appreciate Shaima going with the whole framework on how the national governments can, her policy recommendations were excellent on that. And especially Amina, when she talks about how women's rights are not women's rights, it's about human rights. It's much more bigger issues. Women issues are not just for women-related matters, but it's a global matter. And Aisha, definitely, I can't thank her enough for stressing on sharing right information and also spreading the right news and giving us all the fact checks. But once again, I would like to know from you, Dr. Fadila, because you have spent more time moderating ourselves, but you have such a substantive experience working with OIC and the governments, and you have actually sat at the policymaking table. So if we could have some time before we end our today's seminar, I would really love to hear from you and your experiences and how you have been pushing female leadership within the OIC spectrum. So thank you once again, everyone, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Fahmida. Well, you're asking for a very long story. That story will wait until each one of you will have her platform and call me to speak at her platform. Then I will narrate the long story of sitting at the decision-making table until 1 a.m. in the morning between 35 to 40 men, the only female, and struggling just to pass one resolution or just to keep one word in a resolution. But Alhamdulillah, I'm happy, and I will be sharing this experience with my girls and with our young females, because I really want you all to be up there with your experience. Because the thing is, at a certain time, we walked those difficult paths without being prepared. We had to have more pain. We have to really walk on glass. And we have to be too much in pain because we didn't have enough preparation and we didn't have enough support. But the situation is totally different for you now, because you have lots of amazing people behind you, and you have lots of people who believe in you, and that will make a huge difference. And that's what Aisha said. There is a difference between the problems of girls and problems of women. So today the platform is for girls, so don't bring in women. Let's inshallah talk about, as you said, 665 days in the year. We have lots of time to address our issues, and I cannot say no to our young people. I'm always there available for you whenever you want to address any issue. Thank you again, Fahmida, for your wonderful reflection. And now, Aisha Hanam, please go ahead. You are the last one to reflect on the speech of others. See if any one of them said less about your speech. Now you can give her more credit for hers. Exchange beautiful ideas now. Please go ahead.
I actually enjoyed each single speech that was made. Shaima, Amina, Fahmida, everyone. And I noticed the point in common also, which was the importance of exchanging the knowledge, but also working together. And I was thinking, you know, at the, during each presentation, at the same time, I was taking notes, and I was thinking, okay, there's an idea that I would like to pitch, which is, so currently I work at Tech Adaptica, and what we do is we offer virtual-based campuses that are allowing organizations to have their conferences, their events, or even universities having their classes on the virtual campus. And I was thinking, why not having this virtual campus, one of them being focused specifically as an online center for women across the OIC region, where they could meet and work and exchange things. Because at the moment, for example, I'm on Zoom, but I'm monopolizing the entire conversation. When I speak, no one else can. But on the platform, what is happening is that each one of us has different avatars, and different things can be happening, workshops, conferences. And I think that actually might be really nice to explore and see if it could be useful for women and girls in the region, what themes we could be offering, what classes, or just having the different groups of women working together, actually coming in, because especially now during COVID times where we can't really much travel to meet, so let's meet there. And yeah, I noticed that each one of you, Fahmida, Shaima, and Amina, talked about it and about the importance of meeting, and I was like, okay, this might be something we need to talk about. And also, to the last point that Fahmida said is, definitely, we all spoke, but our experiences are definitely nothing compared to Dr. Fadila's experience, and each one of us has to learn from that, definitely. Yeah. Once again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Aisha. You are making me feeling very shy right now, because you make me feel that I mean, astaghfirullah, yani, look at you, I'm listening to you, I'm enjoying, I'm learning, I'm not being humble here, I'm learning from you, and especially about the avatar. I raise my hand up, teach me how to become an avatar.
Oh, definitely do that.
By the way, Fahmida is with us, and Bangladesh and Dhaka is the Youth OIC capital this year, and it's never late to include one of these conferences, virtual one with the avatars. I can be one of the avatars, and we can inshallah do something about continue the conversation, because this is to be continued. Yani we cannot finish this topic. We're just tackling issues, but our issues are big. And let me say, unfortunately, there is a bright, beautiful part of it where, alhamdulillah, there are so many girls, so many young women, brave and skillful and knowledgeable and strong, are out there making the case a case, and they are very good at it, and they are actually successful, and we are 100 times better than 10 years ago. First year I participated in CSW in New York. There were very few girls speaking about the OIC region, and the second, the third, fourth year, every year I find more women there, and it's not only there, we are together and we network and we go home and we do things together, and that was actually strength built by those wonderful ladies all over the world and all those girls, and so many projects and programs came out of those meetings in New York. And also I believe you, the four of you meeting today, this will lead to a lot of goodness afterwards. So that's what the platforms are, that's what the discussion is for. It's not about the few minutes we speak or how long we speak, it's about networking, it's about taking it from there and doing the action afterward, and making these actually somehow crystallizing on these issues we have been discussing. So basically, alhamdulillah, we did a beautiful job, and you did actually a beautiful job, and I was a very good listener, I hope, because I spoke too much more than I was planning to speak. But there were two questions I have to, because it looks like the people, we were expecting some people to come in and ask questions live, but it didn't happen. So I have two questions, I must read them for you. And then after that, please feel free, whoever wants to answer the question, because they are general questions. The first one is, do you think our educational system and media contents getting better in terms of creating generation that are away from patriarchal understanding? And the other question is, what do you think about the perception being created on social media about Islam being, well, the wrong religion, I mean, against women, by referring to passages from the Quran and the Sunnah, and how can we fight against it as young Muslim women? Yes, there are lots of misperceptions out there and lots of bad, actually, perceptions about Islam, that it's not it's not in the line of empowering women or giving her rights, while subhanallah, all of us, no exception, it's not new knowledge for any one of us that 14,000 years ago women got all helpful right package from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then after that humanity start learning from the Muslim community how to give rights, including the last century only poor women in Europe were treated as a human being finally. So I mean, it's something that like this is a big job for this generation to answer the questions properly, because so many others answered questions but from different angle, like defensive mode, or being under attack, or they didn't have the right tools to address these issues. Most of those issues are now to be tackled at the media level, or at the technical level, or at the legal level. And those are things I think this generation is ready to tackle. So please, if you have anything to say about those two questions before I conclude. And let's start with the order of the speakers. Shema, please, if you have anything to say.
Yes, so I'll start with the first question about the educational system and media. I feel like our educational system is in the entire world, it's having a stagnant mode. So it's been going on for years, and it's the same system all over again. And hopefully, this post-pandemic era will change things, because things just moved from being on campus to off campus, online, and there are a lot of things coming into consideration. The first thing that I have to say about the educational system is that, from my own experience, again, when you attend a class that is face-to-face and on campus, you always think that maybe I'm going to get something out of this. And there's always a huge attendance rate that is, people are not attending as they should. But I noticed that when things turned online, a lot of people were interested into this learning experience, this new learning experience, even though at the first of the pandemic, no one knew exactly how to make things work, how to make a schedule without overworking students and without having to repeat the lecture over and over again. But I think it's moving forward after a long stagnant period of the same thing over and over again, because as a student, in my last years of college, I don't have much left. I can tell that it hasn't been a really fulfilling experience. I'm always getting 1 year ahead, but it's always the same thing coming, the same system, the same thing over and over again, and it gets boring. I think we should have a more practical approach to learning. We should include a co-adaptive learning, a learning that has that takes the participation of the student not just when the question is asked, but co-building a class together. And this has been happening online, and I think that inshallah, post COVID-19, this can move even on campus, because we can't study online all our lives. It's not healthy. But I hope what the changes that this pandemic had on the positive effect continue with the educational system. And as for media, I think like Aisha Anna had already said, we have a large amount of media with us. But the thing is, we also have neutral media. We have unbiased media. It's just that it's not the norm. Sometimes when you open TV, for example, and you watch the news, you have multiple channels, and if you switch from one channel to another, the news can contradict each other. So who's right and who's wrong? We have a lot of fake news going on, and it's always good to raise awareness on where to find exactly the kind of news that will be fact-checked and will not have biased opinions instead of facts. So this is about the media, but I think it's moving forward, because we just need to raise awareness on how to make good factual research instead of biased opinion research. And as for the second question, I think the misconceptions about the Islamic religion for portraying women as having no rights, or the religion that has the least rights is wrong, because if we're just going to talk about religion, like the least religion to portray women this way, well, it's factually wrong, because the other religions don't portray women as highly as Islam does. But aside from that, the point I think that is always pointed out when talking about the Islamic religion is that people don't acknowledge that men and women are different. They are different, and we can't say that they're not. And their leadership styles are different. Everything about them is different, because their biology is different. And so what we're talking about is more than equality. it's equity of rights. We need to give women what they need according to their needs, besides the basic human rights that we are still fighting for girls. But this has already happened, like you said, Dr. Fadila, 1,400 years ago with Islam. So I think what people are trying to say is that we need more than these things in accordance to like equality. But the equality here is not something good. It's not good, because there's a saying that goes, if you tell a fish to climb the tree, it's not going to, because it can't. You need to put a fish in the water so that it can swim. And so if you tell somebody that, if you give someone a right that has nothing to do with them, are you just going to do that just because of equality? No, you need to give the person a right that is according to their needs. And this is what Islam does. It does more than equality. It's actually equity. So I think that's what the people who have misconceptions about this point are talking about. And this is what I have to say about this point. I hope I was clear enough. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shema. Thank you. Just before I give the floor to Amina and Fahmida and Aisha, I would just like to share something in the discussions, because now I have to refer to some history of the OIC. We have been actually having this discourse for many, many years when discussing the documents of women empowerment and the OIC. We have the OPAW, which is the document that is not known well to most of the girls in the Muslim world, but we have an empowerment document. And during the discussion, member states were discussing this issue. Are there differences between men and women, and do we want equality, or do we want equity, or what do we want exactly? And pretty much it goes to this conclusion, very short one, but we need to address this properly in a separate panel. That the issue is not with Islam. It has never been with Islam, because nobody can prove anything that Allah or His Messenger has any messages against women, or to actually call for violence, or any of sorts what's actually out there. The only issue is those stagnant cultures, let me use that word, that have been portraying Islam as the religion of violence, the religion of the enemy of women. And we have to face this reality, and we have it in lots of actually communities across the Muslim world, and we need to deal with it, because until today, we're talking right now, there are still women that FGM is still practiced in the Muslim world. We have women who are deprived from education. We have women who are deprived from their right to just choose her husband, or they are actually not able to inherit simply because she is a female, or many other, she doesn't have any economic rights simply because she's a female, or she's never in the decision making because she's a female. And there are so many disasters out of those stagnant cultures and traditions that they have nothing to do with Islam. Some of them actually, they are not even, has nothing to do with the Arabic era of what they call Jahiliyyah. It's even worse than that. So let's, inshallah, be able to address those issues in the right time. But I remember very well that many of the member states, and even now in Geneva and Brussels, they're trying to use the word gender justice instead of gender equality. Because gender justice is a very comprehensive word that actually addresses all the issues, taking into consideration that men and women are equal in opportunities, are equal in all levels, but recognizing the differences, but then giving the woman what she deserves. That calls for justice, because sometimes her not being the breadwinner, or just because she is the mother and she cannot be out there at the table of the decision, doesn't make her a little less or give her less opportunities. And for that purpose, we needed to give justice. So those issues actually we need to address more. But thank you very much for bringing it up, because those are very important today. Today we needed to talk to them, and thank you. I thank all of you for addressing issues, very sensitive issues that we need to hear today. Please, Amina, your reflection on those questions.
Well, actually, I completely agree with Shema. And just one thing that you have mentioned that I want to point out again is what I wanted to refer in my answer is that gender justice, because equality does not always means justice. So we need to strive for that justice in order to feel equal with men, because if we strive for the equality, we won't feel equal. Actually, maybe this sounds a bit hard to understand, but all women will know how it is hard to find its place under the sky. So yes, I just want to say that I completely agree with what Shema has already said, considering the first question, and about this second one, this gender justice is definitely something that all of us need to focus on.
Thank you very much, Amina. Fahmida, please.
I think Saima has actually very much substantively covered large portion of both the questions. I would just give two examples, especially in regard to the second question, because Islam today is used against women to suppress them, to use violence. Islam is used as a tool of violence because it is misrepresented and it's misinterpreted. One of the many examples that I can say, one comes in my mind right now, is that Surah An-Nisa actually talks about all sorts of rights and privileges women are entitled to, and Allah has given us those rights. In South Asian culture, dowry is one of those long-standing tradition still now for women, and they're tortured for dowry. The other week I saw this suicide video of this Muslim woman in India who jumped out in the river, and before jumping in the river she made a suicide video, and that was heartbreaking to see, because she was being tortured at her in-laws for dowry, whereas Surah An-Nisa totally talks against dowry, and there are specific ayah regarding that. In Surah Baqarah, ayah 282, I realized that often men at the decision-making table or at the authoritative table, they try to misinterpret this thing, that they say that in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 282, male superiority is given in Islam, whereas they take it completely out of context, because this particular ayat was actually under the context of business transaction only. So it is not an overall superiority of male in Islam, whereas this ayat it has to taken in context. Like Quran, there is tafsir, there is shan-e-nuzul, there is every part of Quran that has to be contextualized. There is no scope that we can misrepresent Islam and take one isolated verse of Quran and use it against women or any human being. That would be a huge disrespect. So definitely we can have much longer discussion on it, but thank you again for all the insights that all of the panelists shared.
Thank you very much, Fahmida, indeed. And for the ayah you were mentioned, that qawama, the ayah of qawama, when men are responsible for women, this is an extra burden put on the shoulders of men to serve women, not to slave them or to use to be superior on them. So the tafsir of this ayah is actually very clear, and as you said, everything has to be read in context. We cannot copy paste from the Quran out of context. And this is, I'm very happy to hear this raised level of awareness among young females, activists like you, because this will make it very difficult for people who are trying to abuse women using the word Islam. Thank you very much. Aisha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm actually very glad to see Shaima, Amina, and Fahmida talking about these points, because that's also the point that I wanted to mention, that it's important for people to read the Quran and see what was the historical context the ayahs came in. So the Quranic verses in many instances were revealed in specific circumstances, and that needs to be understood also. So there's the entire contextual terms, and I'm happy to see that all of you were thinking about it. It's really good to know, and that yes, of course, all of the verses of the Quran need to be taken in the context in which they were revealed. And that's actually something that global media and the entertainment world needs to understand. And also that we all know it, and I think that there's still a big work that needs to be done in terms of that, especially for within non-Muslim countries, is that Quran clearly instates the principle of equality amongst all humans, not only based on gender, but also based on race and origins and all of that. So So that's actually very important, and I feel that lots of people don't know about it outside of the Muslim world, and sometimes even within the Muslim world. And something also that I like to say is look at the source. So look at the Quran and not at the Muslim, because may we want it or not, all of the humans are not perfect. So instead of looking at the behavior of someone, look actually at what the text is saying. And also something that for media and people in general need to differentiate is that they need to differentiate Islam and cultures, because as you all know, we all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, each country having its own set and baggage of cultures. And sometimes what can be perceived by foreign media or outside media as patriarchal or misogynist Muslim behavior is actually not related to Islam at all. It's related to cultures and traditions that have nothing to do with it, and that are happening. So yes, and I actually really loved when you said, Dr. Fadila, stagnant cultures, because yes, that's also something that is happening. So,
yeah. Thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you very much. You're wonderful speakers. In coming to the end of this vibrant and fruitful webinar, I would like really to thank my wonderful and energetic speakers. I think I speak for us all in this, saying that your presentations were highly enjoyed. And I'm sure so many enjoyed them. We are so very grateful for this opportunity and chance to constructively think out loud. And also what stood out today were the young voices bringing edge and light to the conversation. I would like to finish with some of your recommendations from this unique discussion, and I hope it will be heard by youth and youth-led organization and policymakers at all levels. I just picked 2 recommendations from each one of you because all your recommendations are heard, but I just would like to highlight Amina, building networks of leaders inside communities, raising awareness of family violence and changing norms. Shema, include women in the decision-making processes concerning the COVID-19 post-COVID-19 recovery policies, legislative, budgetary, etc. Make sure all the workplaces are inclusive and give women a chance to apply to leadership positions they qualify for. Sometimes even they qualify, but they don't get the chance. Fahmida, recognizing the importance of mental health and well-being of women and girls all over the world, and create global or regional support group network for women in OIC countries. That's really very indeed unique. Ensure more accessible healthcare for women and providing telemedicine support to at local and national level to facilitate women in remote areas. She had more, but I just pick up 2. Aisha Hana, OIC member states and their governments should develop policies that have for a goal to end all forms of discriminations against all women and against all girls. That includes economical violence, physical violence, sexual violence, and emotional and psychological violence. Governments could work together and share with one another what worked best for them, exchange of knowledge and good practices, but actually taking it into action. I mean, it's finally really a great session. I would like to thank the team of ICYF. I would like to thank the media department, and I would like to thank again and again our wonderful young speakers for this beautiful afternoon that we spent together. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us, inshallah, success to do more of this and to be successful at doing it and taking it, inshallah, where it takes to be taken. Thank you for joining us today at ICYF MOIC International Women Day program. And please stay in touch with us via social media. We look forward to seeing you soon in our ongoing programs addressing youth issues, girls issues, women issues. Please keep us in your du'as, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you all.